Hello, watercolor painters. This one is for you. This is going to be one of the harbors that we will be painting in Crete, or something that looks very similar to this. This picture looks like it was taken early in the morning. I just kind of pulled this from the internet. The okay, uh, just getting right into business. I use a combination of ultramarine blue and a little cerulean blue for the sky color. And now I'm just massing in all of the water, because if we look at the photograph, we can see that it's early morning. It's not, just by the looks of it, it doesn't look like it's sunset, because you'd probably see people out watching the sunset or more boats. So, also, if you notice the sky, I went from blue, alizarin crimson in a very light wash, and instead of using cadmium yellows, which are too harsh, I used yellow ochre. Okay, so now we're going to start from back to front. So we're going to start from the furthest part away. Now, if you feel you want to go a little bit more colorful on the back, let's say you just want to push the effects a little bit more, or just get a little bit more vibrancy in your color, um, do it before you start painting anything on in the foreground, or even now. Try to get, let's say you wanted to get it, that horizon line just a little bit more yellow ochre ish. You can add that color in, um, even after you dry it. You can always, or when it dries outside. This is and most of the way that I paint is usually, it's one shot. I don't go back. It's basically, this technique is set up for plein air painting. You want to be as quick as possible. If it's a sunny day, and that's kind of crazy to say, because from what I understand, Greece is sunny all the time. So we're only going to have about an hour to do our paintings. Uh, Always remember, just before you start painting, take a photograph of what we're painting. So moving ahead, what did I do in the background? All right, so I always use the same blue when I start from the background to the foreground. So I'm adding, since it's in the distance, there's always a little bit of blue in the architecture, or anything in the distance. Could be trees, whatever it might be, mountains. There's always a little bit more blue, just and that cool tone kind of creates a little more atmospheric distance, and that's what we want to achieve in the paintings. Don't go too dark in the background, because then you won't have any leeway to get darker when you come to the foreground. Now I'm bouncing around here. I'm painting shapes. I don't really know what these boats look like. The picture, I like the lighting on the picture. There wasn't much detail, which I don't really mind that there isn't detail in a picture, because sometimes when we see too much detail, one, we shy away, or we just get nervous. Even when we paint in plein air, we just say, my goodness, there's just so much to paint. Where do you start? Well, you try it in watercolor, in any kind of painting, whether it's plein air or studio painting. You always want to start with big shapes. You want to start from big to small, and try to simplify as much as you possibly can. So a lot of those boats in the background that you saw, I just used a little bit more burnt umber. Actually, I added burnt umber to the ultramarine blue, and it still keeps it a little cool. Some of the dark shapes just obviously represent shadows and reflections under the boat. Now, this side where the building is, that is burnt sienna, burnt umber, and I do believe I used a little cadmium orange and a little yellow, just to get that intensity, because now I want to feel that little sliver of morning light hitting those buildings. Unfortunately, I wish they hit the boats as well, but um, the picture was probably taken just before that happened. But still, it's a nice effect. We get a really good sense of atmosphere. Um, Now, I can see that some of the water, the reflections, now this water is very clean, so it's almost going to be um, almost like Caribbean type water. Your reflections under the boats are going to be very bright green, depending on where the light's coming from. But usually on a morning like this, it's still, you can almost see those turquoise colors in the reflections really coming through. So that's what you want to look for. And you'll see here, we're adding more of what I'm trying to do here really is I'm connecting the reflections on the boats to the water. And and I see, like, at the end of the picture, you see that I make another wash around the water, which I realize I should have done earlier, and I'll um, I'll point that out when we get to that portion of the video. Um, but we're trying to just get the shapes, try to keep the reflections flat. You don't want to put too much detail. You don't want to get too bright in the shadows. Make sure you cover most of the shadow reflections. Um, and now I'm just putting in accents. I'm looking at darks and, well, darks. I can't really look at lights because we're working in a transparent medium. So just start looking for shapes. That's all you have to respond to. In fact, when we start painting the boat, we'll be painting the boat in a way that you'll just see big strokes. And even that little pathway on the dock right there, harbor side, we're going to be painting that pretty much as a flat tone and just building up some detail later on. The idea is try to keep things as simple as possible. Don't do too much. Don't get fixated on one thing. Believe me, I like to paint boats, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of detail here. But I decided not to go so intense with the detail. Move around in a paint in a watercolor. I mean, you should move around in oil paint too, in any kind of medium. You should never stay in one spot. You should always try to work to a finish. Sometimes just painting in the round, going from one shape to another shape, finishing them all almost in the same way throughout the whole process. Now, there's a lot of bright blue. What is this blue? This is probably, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's cerulean blue, and I think I had a little turquoise color in there. If you don't have turquoise, viridian green and yellow, that'll get you there. And that usually comes in most sets of watercolors. So that's viridian green, which is very metallic, and a cadmium yellow will get you that color pretty much guaranteed. And sometimes phthalo blue is good if you have that in your set. Prussian blue, any warm blue will get you a that with yellow will get you a turquoise color. Now here I am, it looks like I just said I'm not fixating, but I'm just starting to get little accents in the boat. But I'm not sitting there taking too much time. I just wanted to get a feel for it so that I can move on. And you'll see that we do come back to it a little bit. Now, as I said before, you don't want to fixate on one part of the painting, but there are things that will create the painting to have a focal point. That boat is the focal point, and the reason why it's the focal point is because if we put a grid around the picture, you'll see that if we follow the law of thirds, that boat is right in the lower third crosshair. Okay, so that's where we can see that happening there. Now, I put a little water down because I wanted to add some color. So whenever you want to add color to a broad area, I mean, there might be times when you're painting like a cityscape or something, and there's a lot of concrete or road or path. What you want to do is you want to, we don't want to have our watercolors look like they're too choppy, but yet we want to have those nice color changes. So here I started with the ultramarine blue. It was a little alizarin crimson and some burnt umber. But I'm going to start adding other colors to that too. And you can see I added a little burnt sienna. Actually, the colors that I utilized in the architecture in the back, the brown buildings, right? So out here, pushing up the envelope, getting that color on the building to be a little bit more intense, darkening that shadow there, which in hindsight, I probably should have made that a little bit lighter. I think I do lift up just a little bit later on, just like there. What I just did there is I just put a piece of paper towel and I just patted it and I lifted it up. Now it made all this, kind of made a mark on it, right? Well, it is probably a 2,000-year-old structure, so it's going to have a little, its share of lumpies and bumpies. So look for things like whatever you're painting, unless it's like a brand new construction. Usually these older European um, houses and buildings are gonna, they're gonna be weathered. So that was a quick way to get some texture. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm using the same color I used for the first light wash that I used originally. But now this is more concentrated. I'm using less water, but it's the same color. So that keeps everything relative. We're still relating colors together. We're building up the base, and we're creating some texture here too. If you see in the reference picture, it's like cobblestone or whatever it is. It's a stone harbor path. So that all I did was use the side of my brush to give it a little side swipe, using the side of the brush to create basically the rock shapes. That's pretty much it. There's nothing. I'm not trying to copy every little shape, but what you want to do is you want to try to, um, and as easily as you can, just give the impression of those shapes. If you try to copy each shape, that's when your watercolor starts feeling laden down. So it's better to just make a flick of the brush. If it looks good, leave it. If it doesn't, just pat it out and try again later. So it's the idea here is to make your paintings look spontaneous, even though we're thinking things through. We knew that we had to put the blue color down first, and that blue actually is unifying. I'm talking about the blue in the water that we did originally. That blue is actually keeping our composition together. So in that respect, we are, I think we're almost done actually. Let's see. So I think I had to help a student on this one. This actually was done originally for a class. But I know maybe some of you weren't in that class and want to do watercolor. I think this should be helpful. Now, because it's going to be on YouTube, just, try to save the link, because when you're there, you'll be able to watch it. We did this when we were in France, and people were able to watch these videos before we went to the given locations. Okay, so now this is where I'm drying everything. I feel that I need a gradation. So I mentioned this earlier in the video. In the water, there was something a little flat. So what I'm going to do here, I dried everything so that I can put a wash. It always, well, when we're outside, if it's 70 degrees and above, it's going to dry quick. Now, you see what I just did? I just put a little bit of a gradation of the same color basically that we used originally. Maybe there was a little bit more cerulean in here because we're getting and the turquoise color. The reasoning for this is now I have a little gradation, so we feel that water is a little darker in the foreground, and it actually feels a little bit more like there's perspective. And this is the painting all finished. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative. Hopefully we will be here painting this or something similar. So I'll be seeing you guys on, I guess it's Wednesday when we get there. All right, have a safe trip. I'll see you in Crete. Bye now.